Alright, quick check, just to make sure we're all set. Perfect. Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to another weekend of Group 2 racing here in LSR. Of course, round 10 here in Group 2. Glad to have you as you all file in here for another round of Group 2 racing here in LSR. Of course, got 19 cars on the grid to start this one. Potentially could see a 20th, though we'll have to wait and see on that. But certainly good to see a just about full grid for this weekend's race here at Hermanos Rodriguez. Of course, as you can see, the first couple of cars coming out of the pit lane with Viperize leading the way in the Mercedes, so we'll stick on board with him for this outlap. But again, thank you as always for joining us. Apologies that we did not have a Group 2 stream last weekend. Sadly, we didn't have any commentators available due to the Easter holiday, though I do hope whatever holiday you may have been celebrating last weekend, or even if it was none at all, that you did very much enjoy it. But yeah, of course, so sadly, did not have a stream last weekend for round 9, but again, should be a very interesting and was at times perhaps challenging race here at round 10 in Mexico. Of course, as usual, I'll be up in the commentary box here. Of course, I'm vacant haddock, so glad to be joining you on this fine Sunday afternoon. And again, should be very interesting, especially with Hermanos Rodriguez having relatively low tire wear. We could see some people taking some more interesting strategies. A medium to soft one-stop is potentially on the table if you play your cards right. But of course, we will have Viperize getting ready to set the first lap, as we'll go ahead and turn on. Still running reduced safety car. Yes, we do. Just because of increased, we do have increased damage and reduced safety car, which seems to work out. Certainly didn't stop a lot of chaos from happening in the Group 1 race yesterday. Of course, if you weren't around for that, won't spoil that result, but certainly was a chaotic affair. This certainly should be very, very interesting as we see Viperize making his way through the turns 4 and 5 chicane and then into this hairpin down of turns number 6 and 7. And now we're running up into the S's. So again, very technical and challenging outside of those, that first kind of combined DRS zone. As you can see, Viperize has invalidated at this point, so he will not be the first to set a competitive lap, as he just runs a little bit wide there in the S's to let the Ferrari go through. I believe that is either Tommy or Crooner. But should be getting ready as some guy out of the session. Let's see if we can jump on board with the Haas coming through and catch an eye of that Williams. But the Williams is some guy showing very early just how tricky that S's section can be, and dropping it on the run up to turn 9. And already we have our first DNF of this qualifying session as James for Aston Martin, as Zersity as well. And Zersity drops it just about 2 corners later, so there's 2 cars out, as James, currently the only one with a time on the board, a 1:17.278. Dodaligo with a 1:17.8 as well, is next to put a time up on the board. Of course, we got James's Aston Martin teammate of Formula Jonah to the line. He'll set a 1:17.7. So certainly still some time on the board for Jonah. Here comes Oreo Hafrican for McLaren, and that's only a 1:18.3 for now. Kevprod, meanwhile, for Haas, can he make a jump up the order? He'll jump up into second place, so he'll split the Aston Martin pairing. And then we got a number of cars coming to the line. First is Deanne Albrecht, who must have made a mistake earlier in that lap with a 1:26, as Tommy XXE for AlphaTauri goes to the top by over a second ahead of James. So very solid time from the AlphaTauri. Of course, his teammate, T34, making his way through the final sector now. As you can see, up in that top right corner, just crossing the 1:10 mark in the lap. And, of course, got to be very careful out of this final corner, because traction is very, very important down this long pit straight, and T34 will instead just dive into the pit lane, so he will not set a lap here. Meanwhile, the Ferrari of Crooner will set a line, and that's only a 1:16.5 from the Ferrari driver, who potentially may just be on an in-lap, and again, just may have made a mistake earlier in the lap, but 1:16.5 is certainly respectable, but it is Tommy XXC who currently sits at the front of the pack. Of course, Kevin Cal started a lap earlier for Mercedes. He's making his way through Sector 2 now. Of course, coming up into that SS section where we've had 2 DNFs early in this qualifying session already. Car is just attacking those curves a little bit too much, which is what you really have to do at times if you really want to maximize that lap time. And as you can see, Kevin as well, just running that little bit too wide and losing that lap time as well. And he'll dive out of the way of the other AlphaTauri. Of course, going to, just to give you a standings update as we reach, as this round will, at the end of today, we'll have 5 rounds left to go in both groups 2 and 3. So it should be very, very interesting there. Of course, still have 6 rounds to go over in Group 1 after we did have to reschedule our round for Portugal. So Group 1 will have an extra round. But for a quick update, it is Kevin Cal currently at the top of the driver standings with 140 points. Bamboo Vegas, meanwhile, sits in second on 123. Sadly, I don't believe Bamboo was able to make it today. Crooner, meanwhile, sits in third on 92 points, with James in the Aston Martin sitting in fourth, followed by Viper Eyes, Alexis Beast, Kevprod, Tommy BR, Tommy XXC, Kendricks, and Formula Jonah is your top 12. Of course, plenty of drivers and plenty of battles still can go on for those lower point scoring positions, but definitely going to be a lot of battles to keep an eye on. Of course, Mexico can be a very difficult circuit to really kind of battle tight together on, particularly after you make your run down into turn 4 when the track tightens up quite a lot. But of course, down the pit straight, where we'll see the cars reach speeds of likely close to 200 miles an hour when you get that DRS wing open at the back, I should see plenty of overtaking opportunities throughout the race, but especially through this SS section. Going to be a lot of single file driving. Perhaps we'll see an overtake or two down through this section that we can see Alexis Beast coming up to now. Of course, hard braking, and then have that right turn as you enter the stadium section. But of course, it's going to be very interesting to see how the drivers attempt to take how our drivers attack the strategy battle in this weekend's race. Of course, if this is your first time coming by LSR, of course, it doesn't seem that we have anybody necessarily on a lap quite yet, except for potentially Viper Eyes' Mercedes, who will jump on board with. No, I believe he's just taking an extra out lap. But of course, if you are new to LSR, definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. We have 3 races every weekend, currently 1 on Saturday and 2 on Sundays. Of course, Group 3 will follow this Group 2 race just shortly after, so definitely stay tuned for that and hit subscribe if you haven't already. I believe we just broached 120 subscribers here on our YouTube channel, so as always, thank you for joining and joining consistently. If you're interested in racing, definitely go ahead and let us know in that live chat, and we'd be happy to get you set up with a link. As Dodaligo, early in this lap, 4/10 up in his Haas through Sector 1. So solid showing there. Of course, 1:17.8 on the board. Those 4/10 would already put him up ahead of his Haas teammate of Kevprod. Of course, now coming into that SS section, really just attacking that curb on the left, really making use of all of the track. Got to make sure you get a good exit and don't run it out too wide. And Dodaligo keeping it very clean through there. And as we cross that second timing marker, he's up 6/10 on that first lap time. So Dodaligo going very comfortably. Still 3 turns left to go. There's 1 and 2, keeping it nice and tight to the curbs. And you, of course, got the hairpin on the pit straight of 3. Very important to make sure you get the traction right and keep it nice and tight to the pit wall. And Dodaligo jumps up into 3rd, so a big improvement there from the Haas to boost him up onto the 2nd row. I believe it's a McLaren to the line next, or you'll have to know he'll just dive into the pit lane. And then a number of cars just seem to be getting ready to start their laps, one of whom, of course, is Crooner, sitting 3rd in the driver standings. Of course, going over the constructors' standings real quick. It's really, as of right now, it's very much a battle at the top between Mercedes and Alpine. Of course, Mercedes sitting on 209 points, with Alpine sitting on 192. Ferrari is pretty solidly in third as they sit P2 and P3, as Tommy BR sets a very nice lap time and goes up into 1:16.3, and Kendrick, meanwhile, gets disqualified from the session for parking up in a dangerous location. So Kendricks is out of this qualifying session, and he will start last, so potentially just spinning and not getting moving quite quick enough means that the Alfa Romeo pairing, rather, of Kendricks and Zercity will start on the back rows of the grid, so going to be very disappointing for that duo. Of course, going around, we'll jump on board with JD Bassett McLaren, or we won't, because he's just starting his lap. So we'll jump on board with Kruner. He's 3.5 tenths up early, so he's going to be threatening Tommy XXC for that pole position, keeps it nice and tight out of that final corner into the line, and he takes that pole position 1:16.0 for the Ferrari. So very comfortably into that top spot, almost 3 tenths ahead of the AlphaTauri driver, so very strong from Kruner. Jan Albrecht as well picked up 4 tenths on that lap. He's up into P4, so jumping just ahead of Dodaligo. So very comfortable there. Of course, we got Viperize now, I believe, just starting his lap, so he'll run out wide just to try to get as good of a run down the pit straight as possible. So I'll have to pay attention to his lap time. T34 as well, just starting a lap, but I believe the next driver to cross the line will be that Red Bull, and it is Alexis Beast, currently sitting at a 1:17.3, up 2 tenths through the first 2 sectors, and now coming down into the stadium section. Of course, gonna very, very slow speed here. So you got to be very careful, especially once you get onto the throttle on this exit onto the pit straight. Here comes Alexis Beast out of the final corner. There's that Red Bull coming to the line. He'll pick up 3 tenths and jump up into P5. So Dodaligo slipping down that order a little bit. I believe it's McLaren next to the line, and it's JD Bass and Oreo Hafrican swapping places. The Ferrari would be the next to line. That's Kruner, but he invalidated that lap, of course, that being an in-lap. I believe it's Jim will also dive into the pit lane. Just go ahead and get a fresh set of tires, as it seems that most cars all going to be diving into the pit lane. Meanwhile, our Drivers' Championship leader of Kevin Cal will be starting what could potentially be his final lap, depending on how much he's going to use those soft compound tires. Of course, as we jump on board, currently Kevin, the only driver to have not set a lap time just yet. Of course, as we jump on board, you can see on that dashboard top speeds of about 207 miles an hour here in qualifying, which is about as fast as all of our drivers will get, and then potentially up to 200 miles an hour in race conditions. But here comes Kevin Cal. Of course, that Ferrari going to stay out of the way, and Kevin will have clean track the rest of the way, and that's a 28.5 for that first sector. Of course, now coming in through Sector 2, we got this double right-handed hairpin. Keeps it very tight there, and rather clean on the exit. And, of course, into the S's now, where we've seen two crashes here in this qualifying session, and plenty of invalidated laps. But Kevin, utilizing as much track as he can there, on that lap, and of course down the hard braking zone for this right-hander into the stadium section. So just a couple corners left to go. Where will the Mercedes slot into the order? Of course, 110, 111 as he rounds that final corner. Going to keep it nice and tight out of this final corner and to the line, and it will only be 6th fastest. So still a respectable time, but a second off that pole time of Kruner. Meanwhile, the hat of Kevprod is on a lap as well. He's going to look, can he improve at all, or will he dive into the pit lane? Yes, he will, so he's not going to improve on that lap, so it'll be Kevprod into the pit lane, as we can see a number of drivers getting out to start their final laps. One car that's at least on a lap right now, or hasn't come directly out of the pit lane, is the Ferrari of Tommy BR. So, of course, Ferrari going to be looking to try and make some inroads back to the 2 teams ahead of Mercedes and Alpine, with just about 5 rounds left to go in the season. Of course, that does include 2 spring races, so still plenty of opportunities for Ferrari to make a push for the Constructors' Championship, though it does seem to be a 3-horse race at the front there, as well as getting closer to a 2-horse race out at the front between what could be Kevin Cal and Bamboo Vegas. But Tommy BR going to back off there after invalidating that lap. Of course, we do have Formula Jonah, who I don't believe is on the lap because I don't think that 10-minute lap time would be accurate. But of course, we'll have to wait and see as a number of drivers start their final laps. I believe the first to zoom will be Tommy XSC, of course, already on the second row of the grid, but is going to be looking to potentially fight Crooner for the honors of pole position. Of course, going to be coming up to the first timing board here, just at the end of Sector 1, right before the braking zones of Turn 4, and he's up a 10th on his first lap time very early. Of course, still needs to pick up about another 10th and a half and look to be a little bit loose there on the exit of Turn 5, but managing to keep that AlphaTauri under control. Potentially just a bit of a weird visual bug, as that may have actually been a full-on mistake, as Tommy XC will abort that lap and just go deep to get out of the way of, I believe that was that was JD Bass he was getting out of the way of. His teammate Oriole Hafrican, meanwhile, is up about 2/10 on his lap time, of course, coming into the stadium now. Of course, going to be the McLaren going to be looking to do very nicely. Of course, in 16th at the moment. We'll have to see if he can improve at all, potentially jump up that order at all through the final corner and to the line. Oriole Hafton is good enough for 13th for the moment. Of course, potentially time to recharge those batteries and take another go at it, but 13th is as fast as he'll go for the moment. Viperize, meanwhile, jumps up into P4. The Aston Martins go 9th and 10th. I believe it'll be a Ferrari next to the line. That is Tommy BR. He'll dive into the pit lane, potentially. That may be his qualifying session over, because I don't believe he'll be able to go out and get another lap. Deanne Albrecht goes 5th place for Alpine, so a very solid showing for the French outfit. Of course, especially with, I believe, some guy is also in the Alpine today, but of course DNFing on that first out lap. Let's see. Is anybody on laps that we can see that's significantly improving? Speedy Gunner to the line. He'll stay in P13, though he does pick up some time on that first lap. T34 will start his final lap. He currently sits P15, but of course, your current pole sitter of Crooner is going to be looking to potentially increase that gap at the front, coming up to that first timing marker, and he's up about a quarter of a tenth early on in this lap, as we can see as the Red Bull of, I believe, Speedy Gunner, and Crooner as well, in a very similar way to how we saw Tommy in fifth. He's done as Speedy Gunner runs deep and then turns around and goes the wrong way, so he'll lose that time, so he'll drop from 13th down to 18th. So he gets disqualified there. So a big mistake from the Red Bull, potentially just looking to go deep and get out of the way as time does expire in this qualifying session. So the Tommies in 2 and 3 and Viperize in P4 cannot improve. So we'll have to see where a lot of the other cars slot in. Of course, we'll have Crooner coming to the line. Of course, was up early in the lap, but I had a mistake there. He'll stay in P1, but a 1:16.5 will not be enough to improve. The McLaren as well will dive in the pit lane. He won't improve. It'll be a half next to the line. That's Kevprod. That lap is good enough for P10. P34 next to the line for AlphaTauri. He's invalidated his lap, so that will not count. Dodoligo, Kevprod's teammate, down at Haas, was up 3/10, but that's another invalidation, so penalties potentially looking to play a significant part in the race, as Kevin Cal, your current Drivers' Championship leader, only 8th at the moment for Mercedes, so not a great showing from Kevin. James has invalidated as well, and I believe that's everybody on the lap, so that'll do it for qualifying. So it will be Crooner and Tommy XXC starting in that first row, and then you got a Ferrari 1-3 as well as Crooner and Tommy BR, both with very, very solid showings in this qualifying session. The Alpine of the end, Albrecht will start 4th, as we can see. James coming to the line with a little bit of style points. Sadly, I don't think got the full 360 in there, but certainly made it to the line, which is decently. But yeah, of course, you got Crooner, Tommy XC, and Tommy BR. The end, Albrecht, Viperize Alexis Beast and James. Then you got Kevin Cal at about a second back from Crooner, followed by Dodoligo, Kev Prod, Formula Jonah for Aston Martin, Jim 111, the Swede for Williams, will start 12th. Oreo African will then be 13th, as T34 will be 14th. And then some guy in Xercity, after spinning and crashing out on their opening laps, failed to set times. And then Speedy Cunner and Kendricks, both with DSQs due to mistakes that they made, potentially recovering their cars. So the two Canadians will start at the tail of the field. So, of course, if you got any predictions for today's race, definitely go ahead and throw them in the live chat, as we'll have about 30 seconds to a minute before we get going here. Of course, if you haven't done so already, if you could hit that like button down below, it just takes a couple seconds. That would be very much appreciated. Of course, looking to continue growing the league into the new year and the new game, which, again, should hopefully be more stable and even better for racing. But, of course, definitely look forward to that. And if you're interested in joining us, either for the remainder of this season or potentially into the new game, as we will continue to have LSR racing into the new game cycle, definitely go ahead and let us know in that live chat, and we'd be happy to get you set up with a Discord invite link and have you racing as soon as possible. So, of course, 15 seconds for all the drivers to select their strategies. Of course, it's going to really depend on the amount of safety cars that we see here today, but but it's a long run down into turn 1, so that tire choice could be very, very crucial, because you could gain and lose a lot of positions here. But of course, 3, 4, and 5 lights, and we are underway here in Mexico. It seems to be a decent start, at least for all of our drivers. It seems that Albrecht already looking to make a move, as we may go 4 wide here for a second, as Tommy XXC and then Albrecht has gotten Tommy BR, and as the cars fan out, it seems to be 3 and 4 wide in places, and it will be Tommy XXC down the inside. Crooner able to defend and hold that inside into turn 2, and loads of cars spinning behind. Loads of contact as well. I believe that was a Ferrari of Alexis Beast making a little bit of contact with Tommy XXC, but it seems largely clean. For Jim and Formula Jonah, though, spinning in the background, and as they all fan out down into turn number 4, it is still Crooner with the brief advantage. Of course, got a lot of cars scrambling behind, but it seems that for the most part, a lot of cars able to make it. Now, as we come now down into the S's for the first time, again, 3/10 up at the front. Of course, it's going to take about a lap or two, especially for Crooner's hard compound tires. You can see the white-walled tires, white-walled rims on that Ferrari to get up to speed. And here comes the AlphaTauri, and we do have a safety car. I believe that is only the virtual safety car that's been deployed, as I believe Kev Prod, as you can see there, damage and no for win on the Haas car. So we'll get a virtual safety car here. So everybody will have to slow down and really respect that delta, so hopefully nobody gets damaged because of that, as Dean Albrecht I believe Dean Albrecht had a spin potentially and just went into the wall, but he drops all the way down to last, so I don't know what happened to the Alpine, but he's certainly been, there was potentially just some sort of damage there, as we will do see both JD Bass and Kev Prod dive into the pit lane, but it is solely a virtual safety car, so we'll take the advantage to go ahead and check the tire selection. So, of course, do have Crooner, who's the only driver in the top 8 to choose those hard compound tires out of the gate. And as we get underway, it seems that Tommy XSC has got a great jump. He timed that almost perfectly. Is he going to be able to make a move here in turn 5? He's going to have the outside now and loose there from Crooner. He's not going to be under pressure for his teammate. But Tommy XXC timed that virtual safety car restart very, very beautifully, and is able to make a move for the lead into turn number 4. So that was a great move there from the AlphaTauri, making the most of that timing. Now, of course, Crooner going to have to really try to get those hards into the right operating window to keep his Ferrari teammate behind, who's under threat from Alexis Beast in that Red Bull. James, meanwhile, falling down the order, as I believe we have had a spin from potentially both Jim and James, so I don't know if there was potentially contact there, but something potentially went on, though I certainly can't say for certain, as Jonah able to overtake Speedy Gunner. Of course, DRS active this lap, but that isn't going to matter, at least this first time down the pit straight, but Crooner still closing on Tommy XXC, so Tommy going to be very much under threat especially once Crooner gets that DRS advantage on the next lap. Of course, the Speedy Gunner and James both diving into the pit lane, so potentially damage on both of their cars. So they'll be back with JD Bass and KevProd, and we'll be kind of hoping for a safety car, as Viperize as well has left the session, so that's potentially a disconnect. But of course, that Mercedes currently in 9th. Of course, the Alfa Romeos as well, really taking advantage of that start. They were towards the back of the grid. They're up to 8th and 10th. So we'll also take the advantage to go ahead and check the position change. And of course, it is both Alfa Romeos who actually now sit 8th and 9th, who are some of the big gainers, as Zercity able to overtake Dodoligo, who made a mistake there in the S's. That's a spun hat across the track as well. That's Zercity as well, making a mistake there too. So that's 2 spins there. As Oreo African is the first to get a time penalty. But of course, your big gainer right now is Kendricks in the Alfa Romeo, as well as T34 and the Alfa Tauri. They're up 12 and 8 positions, respectively. But that's a very solid showing from them. Of course, here comes Tommy BR, potentially Crooner, with a mistake there earlier in that lap. As you can see, all those cars blasting down towards turn number 1. DRS for both the Ferrari and the Red Bull. For a teammate going to look to the inside. Potentially some contact there between the teammates. But it seems that no harm, no foul. Of course, Tommy will have a second helping of DRS, and Tommy XC is going to be looking behind him at this battle and say, just keep going, I want all the space I can, especially if these Ferrari teammates continue to make contact. Crooner going to try to stick it around the outside. He's going to have a slight edge into turn 6, and he's going to be able to hold that position for now, so still under threat. Kevin Cal, meanwhile, has pulled up to this fight, so now we got a 4-way fight for second going on. Of course, Tommy XC is going to be looking to take as much advantage as possible and continue to stretch that gap up at the front as Tommy BR as well with a 3-second time penalty. So again, just keep a real close eye on those time penalties throughout the race, because it's really easy to just run that little bit wide, whether that's in the run up to turn number 6, that hairpin, when you're just trying to get as wide as possible, carry as much speed through, or through the S's as well. Very easy to get track limits, warnings, and penalties through those sections of the circuit. Of course, as we pull onto the pit straight to start lap number 5, that gap is just at about 3.5 tenths up at the front. Here comes Tommy BR on his Ferrari teammate. Of course, we saw them dice very close together last time around. Tommy's going to look to the inside, but not going to quite have the space. As JD Bass is out of the race, that's a spin at the exit of the S's. Will that bring out the safety car? That will bring out the first full safety car. So a spin there from JD Bass just on the exit of the S's is going to bring out the first full safety car of this race here on lap number 5. So of course, Tommy XC still going to be leading the way, but going to have that advantage that he built of about 2.5 seconds before the safety car came out, be nullified. As Crooner with a mistake potentially, as potentially just trying to respect the delta. And his teammate made contact with him. What happened between the Ferrari drivers? Tommy BR with contact on his teammate and has knocked him down to 5th place. What just happened? And the Ferrari does have damage, so I believe Crooner potentially just slowing to respect, because he had to respect that delta, and potentially just got rear-ended by his teammate, who didn't know, who was unaware that was going to happen, and he's going to have to dive into the pit lane here. So that's very poor from Tommy. Your leader of Tommy XC as well will dive into the pit lane and swap to hard compound tires now. So your leader is now a Lexus Beast for Red Bull, followed by Kevin Cal and Crooner in 3rd. T34, meanwhile, is 4th. Where will Tommy XC, who led for this first bit of the race, come out? He'll come out down in, I believe, P9 or P10 once he gets back out. As I believe he will slot in right behind that Aston Martin and is going to hold P10. So still in the points and has that pit stop done and out of the way. Of course, number of cars pitting at this point as well. Of course, a number of drivers as well going to be recovering from damage. Drivers like James, Speedy Gunner, KevProd, and Dodoligo, who started a little bit further up, as well as Tommy BR, who suffered damage from that collision with his teammate, are going to be able to use this to recover and catch up to the safety car. Though Speedy Gunner and James certainly going to have to get at least a little bit of a move on. as we should have one more lap under the safety car, but of course still have 18 cars left in this race. We're just about, but should be getting back underway shortly. Of course, under safety car from a mistake from JD Bass at about this point in the track, just on the exit of those S's, and in the rundown right before the stadium section. Just potentially came in, tried to push it a little bit too much, got out on the curb, and just found the wall on the inside there, bringing out the Aston Martin safety car. Of course, once again, it's definitely going to be interesting to see what everybody does. Of course, 3-second time penalties already for Oreo, Xercity, Tommy, and Speedy. And I doubt those will be the last time penalties we'll see. Of course, we can check the... Can I not check the... We can check the race director. So, of course, as you can see, loads of track limits warnings already in these first 5 laps, including some guy, Speedy Gunner, with multiple track limits warnings. Xercity, as you can see there. But, of course, numerous warnings, including some collision warnings as well, but those likely won't matter quite as much, but still should be rather interesting to see. Of course, just going to be waiting for Speedy Gunner and James to pull up to the back of this pack. Shouldn't be much longer. Of course, should get back underway on the next lap, but it will be Alexis Beast leading away for Red Bull. So we'll have to see what he can do and see if he can hold back Kevin Cal and Crooner at all, and potentially make a getaway from the 2 cars currently in first and third in the drivers' standings. Of course, should be here shortly. Of course, going to be getting back underway. Lap 8 should be that first lap where we're back on full racing conditions. Where we have the safety car in this lap, should get the notification here in just a couple of seconds. As it seems that we will not. It seems that we will have the safety car for another lap just to allow the Red Bull and the Aston Martin to catch up just that little bit more. As we can see, a lot of cars having to stop there. And that's a spun McLaren, potentially with damage, as well as just people not really respecting how much the safety car has to slow down. And it just looked like a parking lot there on the exit of the S's, or potentially just cars slowing down as well to just try and do some burnouts to get some heat into those tires. Xercity as well. Xercity's going to dive into the pit lane, so potentially the Alfa Romeo with damage. The Williams is in behind him, as is the Ferrari of Tommy BR. So yeah, it seems that there was a number of instances of contact there. So certainly going to be one for the steward's room. But certainly a very interesting situation there. So those 4 drivers, of course, will have the freshest tires, and will have a little bit extra time. We'll have some extra space to get those medium as they all switch to medium compound tires. But they'll all have the opportunity to get those tires right into the operating window that they want. Of course, they can take the lap back to try and catch up with the safety car a little bit slower, but we'll get underway at about the 25% mark, starting with lap number 9 out of 36. So we'll have 28 laps to go this next time we cross the line. Of course, been on safety car for a couple of laps now, but due to JD Bass having to retire from the race due to damage, just on the exit of the S's section. Of course, if you are interested, you are enjoying, definitely hit that like button if you haven't done so already. Would very much appreciate, very much appreciate that. Of course, safety car now in this lap, so Alexis Beast will have control of the field, and of course will be slowed down a rather considerable amount, especially due to the fact that that safety car is going to have to get all the way into the pit lane. Of course, should be able to get back underway very shortly. Of course, you can see the Aston Martin safety car rounding the corner and diving into the pit lane. And the Red Bull will be released, and he gets a decent jump on the Mercedes of Kevin Cal. So that gap already up to 6/10 as we get back racing. Of course, you can see the pack of 3 behind him per second, very closely tied together. Crooner potentially going to have a chance to look to the inside of Kevin Cal, but not going to quite have the ability to make that move stick. Jim, meanwhile, up into 5th, as well as Speedy Gunner and Dodoligo swapping places, but it seems largely clean down into turn 1 this time around, but it is Alexis Beast with a solid jump there, will lead away. Formula Jonah, meanwhile, up into 6th. Has a run potentially to the outside of Viper, as can the Aston Martin get this move done. He'll, of course, have the inside here as James is out of the session. So James out of the race. What happened there is you can see that Aston Martin just deep there. I don't know what happened, but that is James out of the race. It seems that for now it'll just be yellow flags in Sector 1 and 2. So we'll keep racing here. There goes Viperize. Viperize with a mistake. He's dropping down the order. He's down into 16th after a potential spin there. So drivers really finding these conditions here in Mexico treacherous, even if they are dry. Just the track proving very challenging for a lot of drivers here in this race. Of course, James with that DNF will not be causing a safety car. So potentially that JD Bass spin was just a retirement. So not quite sure what happened there, but of course that is our second DNF of this race. But of course that gap at the front now up to 7/10. Of course still 2 more laps, or it's still about another lap and a half before DRS is properly activated and is really able to be used. Of course with that run out of the SS section, the first time DRS can be used next lap, so on lap 11. Of course, no DRS for 2 laps after the safety car, and that's Tommy BR with a mistake down at turn, I believe, number 3. So the Ferrari just really not having a great day. As Formula Jonah now looking to the outside of Jim. Can the Aston Martin make it 2 moves in 2 laps? He's going to hold the outside, which will become the inside as we make our way into the S's. Can the Aston Martin finish that move on the Williams? Yes, he can. Very nice. And Jim is going to lose another position to Tommy XXC as well. So Jonah and Tommy XXC able to get Jim into that corner. Of course, here comes Tommy on Jonah, and he's going to get that move done very, very easily. But of course, a big pack behind there. So it's now an AlphaTauri 4 and 5. The Speed Gunner also able to overtake KevProd, and Albrecht takes advantage and is going to have to stop short of going into that Red Bull. So he's going to re-lose that position. Of course, the Alpine and the Haas going to be almost side by side, and the Haas spins, or the Alpine spins and collects, I believe, 2 or 3 cars. There's damage to the Alfa Romeo, so Kendricks is going to have to dive into the pit lane. So I don't know if that was due to contact, but it seems that Albrecht just got a little bit loose there on the exit, and Dodoligo just had nowhere to go. And that means Kendricks is going to have to dive into the pit lane for a front wing change. Meanwhile, up at the front, Crooner able to overtake Kevin Kell, so that's the Ferrari up into second place. So those hard tires potentially just coming better and better compared to those mediums. So Crooner potentially now with the tire advantage is going to be looking to make the most of it at the front, especially with Tommy XSC showing some solid pace behind. And of course, still a 4-second gap to this battle for the lead, with the top 4 all separated by less than a second. Of course, should be entering the pit stop phase shortly. Would expect some guy as well. Some guy is out. Some guy is retired. And that's a full safety car. I don't believe that was due to terminal damage. Let's see if we can see the Williams. I believe the Williams is already despawned. But that's a retirement. Tommy BR with front wing damage again, so that Ferrari can just not stay out of trouble. But yeah, I don't know what happened with some guy's Williams. But it has brought out another safety car. Oreo Hafkin, meanwhile, 5-second time limit for ignoring yellow flags. A number of drivers diving in the pit lane, including T34, Alexis Beast, Kevin Cal, as well, who will stay behind that Red Bull. But it will be Crooner retaking the lead here on lap 12 with the second safety car of the race. Certainly the second DNF that we've seen, I think at the same time, cars are trying to make overtakes, are potentially trying to make either overtakes or just not, giving a whole lot of space in that SS section. So whether it's a mistake that's going on in that section that is just catching a lot of our drivers out, or just drivers potentially battling a little bit too close through this section of track where it gets very, very narrow. And there's really only one racing line through here that you can make work. can be very, very dicey, but of course that does mean we have our third DNF of this race, with some guy being out. So that's some guy, James and JD Bass, already out of this race here on lap number 12. Of course, be at the 1/3 mark at the end of this lap, but of course going to be hoping to get a little bit more clean air racing. Of course, going to be very tightly packed together, and as the saying goes, safety cars tend to breed more safety cars, so hopefully we can keep it clean throughout the rest of this race, but should be very, very interesting to see. Of course, we do have a steward for anybody new to LSR. We do as well have a post-race stewards room, so of course the standings that you'll see in these races are generally rather accurate, but of course incidents do go down to the stewarding room, and that's supported by footage that all of our drivers take themselves. So certainly stewards are likely to be busy this weekend and this upcoming week. Of course, they will have some time to deal with that before we head to rounds. Before we head to rounds number 10 in Group 1 and 11 here in Group 2. So that'll be next weekend, and that will be at Suzuka. So that'll be the Japanese Grand Prix, which is as well our third sprint weekend of the season. So if you're interested in potentially seeing that, of course going to be another technical circuit, but of course the return, or I don't know if it's the return or the debut of Suzuka here in LSR, as I don't believe that is a track that we've raced at as a league yet, but should be a very, very interesting race. Of course, Suzuka, very challenging, very technical, not a lot of overtaking opportunities, as we do get the notification that the safety car will be in this lap, so will be Crooner now with control of the pack, so should be getting ready back to go shortly. But of course, if you are excited for Suzuka, definitely stay tuned in. Should be a very, very interesting opportunity to go racing. Of course, Crooner now with control of the pack. Of course, going to have to wait for that safety car to be fully in the pit lane before we get back underway. And should be getting going in just a couple seconds, as we do have Crooner on the power. As here we go, we're back underway. Start of lap 14 here, and that's a really good jump for Crooner. He's up over a second. As here comes Formula Jonah on Tommy XIC. Tommy going to slice across the track to the inside. But is the Alpha Tower going to be able to hold the position? Yes, he will. Alexis Speed, meanwhile, over to take Dodoligo, so really making the most of that restart. Contact there between the Red Bull and the Haas, though it seems that both haven't come off too poorly, and Dodoligo is now going to be under pressure from Kevin Cal, but Crooner really making the most of that safety car restart. He's got that gap up to a second and a half now. Is Jim able to take P10, overtaking Cav Prod a little bit down the order, but of course they're going to keep battling as they make their way into the braking zone. But of course Crooner looking to now make a getaway, but of course got a long train of cars behind Tommy XXC here as we make our way into the S's section of the lap. Of course, got a lot of the pack now fanning out just a little bit, but of course, Tom Crooner will have to pit again off of those hard compound tires. His yellow flag already. Who is that for? That is for a Williams, I believe. Or no, that is for the Alpine of Deanne Albrecht. So just having a spin there, potentially attacking the curb a little bit too much, but will keep that Alpine out of the wall, so he'll have a chance to recover as we continue on in this race. Of course, as we continue here, of course, no DRS until the next lap. Of course, 22 laps left to go now here in Mexico City. And of course, as we come down into turn 1, everybody's seeming to just hold station for the moment. That gap at the front up to a second and a half. But of course, Tommy XC with the big advantage of already having pitted, so we can potentially, and certainly within reason, take those hard compound tires to the end of the race. Just for a little bit of context, from yesterday, the mediums start to get to about 60 to 65% tire wear, of course, after about 20 or so laps. So you can definitely take the hards at the end, though they'll certainly be risks due to wear for that, but it's certainly not outside of the realm of possibility for Time XXC, to finish the race on that set, as it does seem to be Crooner versus Tommy at the front, though Tommy with a big mistake there into that left-hander, and he's going to lose a rather significant amount of time to the cars behind him. But of course, DRS now going to be activated as we start lap number 16. Of course, again, no DRS assistance down the pit straight or out of turn 3 this lap. We do have as well Oreo African now defending from Alexis Beast. Here comes the Red Bull. The McLaren going to go back to that racing line. The Red Bull going to take a peek to the inside, but not going to quite have the move to try and get that done, or try not have the space to get that done. So he'll back out of that move and try again a little bit later, potentially on the run down here into turn 4. That looks to be a very strong exit from the Red Bull. He's going to peek the outside, switch back to the inside. They're side by side, so it's the Red Bull with the advantage. And by the time they get into turn 5, that will be the Red Bull a length ahead. So that's a nice move there from Alexis Beast to move up into P4. Of course, Jonah, meanwhile, looking to kind of keep Tommy XXC honest as that gap kind of hovering around a second. Though it seems that Tommy just waiting is considerably more comfortable through that S section as the gap gets up to about 1.3 seconds. Of course, drivers will have the advantage of DRS for the first time here in the stadium section, but the one that is very, very significant will be this one down the pit straight. Of course, it's also important to note the amount of ERS usage on some of these cars. Of course, the Ligo is sitting at about 50%. If we swap over to the McLaren of Oreo African, you can see that overtake bar down at only about 15%. So Oreo African going to be rather vulnerable here to potentially more than one car. As you can see, Kevin Cal there in the background, but for now it'll just be Dodolio going down the inside, and as they break down into turn 1, the McLaren will continue to fight it. He'll still have that inside line as almost 2x2 they go, but it will be the Hasseby advantage, and now he'll be under threat from a number of other cars. Of course, he'll be the only car there without DRS advantage, so he'll defend the inside into turn 4. There's the Mercedes around the outside, and he almost got pinched there, and he does get pinched. Oreo had nowhere to go and had to slow up, and just because of the amount of drivers that had to check up, Oreo African goes round. He just had nowhere to go and ends up being spun round, and is going to drop down into P15. So I don't know if that was T34 or Jim that just didn't have enough time to stop. But certainly seemed to be just a racing incident there, but very unlucky for Oreo to just be caught up, especially without DRS in that situation. Jonah, meanwhile, was, I think, of a bit of a mistake during that lap, as he'd lost a lot of time to Tommy XXC, so potentially just dealing with dirty air behind, but he's got Alexis Beast hot on his heels. Of course, we'll have to see if the Green Bull can defend from the Red Bull as we blast down the pit straight. Of course, you can see that red light flashing at the back of the Aston Martin as Viperize spins around on the exit of the stadium section. But here comes the Red Bull. He's going to be down the inside, and he's going to be head into the braking zone. Jonah potentially going to have a shot, not quite going to have a shot at fighting back, and almost into the back of Alexis Beast, but it will be the Red Bull continuing to hold the advantage, as he'll be able to pull away there with DRS assistance. Of course, you have a double helping of DRS here at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. So we'll be Formula Jonah where it will be Alexis Beast rather with the advantage there for now. So we'll have to keep an eye on that battle, and certainly don't write off Dodoligo and Kevin Cal either, who will be quickly on the scene and in that fight for P3. This is our crooner. Our leader is the first of those top 4 to receive a 3-second time penalty for track limits. Certainly going to be interesting to see how that goes. Of course, just about at the halfway point in that gap at about 1.2 seconds, as Tommy VR is out of the race. Tommy VR in the same spot that we've seen multiple drivers lose it already, as you can see from the cam on the Mercedes. Just in that left-hander, just that wall is very, very close to the circuit, and it's just resulted in already 3 DNFs. And so will be our 3rd safety car here on lap 19 of 36. So drivers just really pushing, especially being close together and potentially dealing with a little bit of dirty air. So whether it's dirty air or just the nature of some of these curves and some of the corners, that is our fourth DNF of this race. Of course, all three of them really coming at that exit onto the DRS sector before the stadium section. Of course, the only exception to that being James, who seemed to make contact either with the inside wall or with another car, and was knocked out of the race down on the run down to turn 4. But of course, the safety car will be back out here in Mexico. So definitely a number of... so it seems that Mexico is going to be highlighted by a lot of fast and slow running. One sec, just going to make sure. So yeah, going to be a lot of kind of stop and start. So potentially could see even one more safety car, though hopefully we can get the last 16 laps without incident. But certainly going to be interesting to see. Of course, Crooner, who was in the lead, took advantage and took me to the pit lane. Oh, apologies for that. But of course, we do also have Tommy XXC. To have Crooner, Tommy XXC, and Down all stopping for a fresh set of medium compound tires. And so certainly we'll have an advantage as this race continues. Though certainly may take a minute for them to try and make inroads towards Alexis Beast, Kevin Cal, and T34 up at the front. Of course, certainly worth, now that we are past that halfway point, to once again go ahead and check both out position change and the penalties. So everybody in the top 8 gaining a number of positions will largely have that tire advantage. Biggest gainers, of course, Kendricks, who started at the back of this grid, as well as Zersity, who started very close there as well, up 14 and 10 positions. So Alfa Romeo having a really, really great day so far. T34 up 11, and Speedy Gunner up 12 as Viperize is out of the race. So that's under safety car, so the Mercedes is out. So what happened there? Certainly haven't seen any penalties come up. Potentially I was just, whether that was avoidance or just trying to put some heat to the tires and just George Russelling it, and just finding that wall off to the left. That's certainly going to be something that was very, very confusing. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what happened there. Of course, safety car in this lap, so it should be getting back underway shortly. Of course, safety car is in, so that means Alexis Beast will once again have control of the pack. Of course, had control of our first restart. Of course, is going to be slowed down a little bit. Of course, going to have that limiter on. As we get underway here, is that going to be, he gets a decent enough jump ahead of Kevin Cal to be able to at least keep that gap the same as we get back underway, as we get back to that interval and tire graphic, just that way you all know what's going on. Jim getting a great run there on T34, so the Williams will gain a position off the restart, so that's a great jump for Jim to get up into the podium places. But of course, Alexis Beast looking to now just pull away, hopefully, from, or Alexis Beast is going to be looking to hopefully pull away from Kevin Callan as they file down into turn number 4. Going to be rather comfortable working through there as the pack is spread out a little bit. And of course, we'll have the red, we do have Crooner making a move on KevProd as Tommy XXC as well. Looked to be under threat there. I believe KevProd tried to go around the outside potentially, either that or was pushed a little bit wide by Crooner taking that inside line. So potentially a good move there. And here comes Crooner on the Alfa Romeo. Not going to quite have the move. Zersity, meanwhile, going to look up the inside of Speedy Gunner and is actually going to be under threat from the outside by Crooner, who's going to now have that advantage into the stadium section. So that's a very opportunistic move there from the Ferrari, as the AlphaTauri as well takes advantage as the Alfa Romeo Adversity is round, so potentially just on that 2 title line, and just loses that back end there. Of course, don't know whether there was contact there or not, but here comes Crooner on Speedy Gunner. He's just going to stay tucked in, and he's going to be pinched all the way down to the line. They're going to be side by side. Of course, you can see Kendricks and T34 side by side up ahead as they go side by side now through turns 2 and 3. Crooner with a slight advantage, going to push Speedy out wide there, but of course Speedy still going to have that run, so they're going to be side by side briefly, but he's going to drop down. Tommy XSC, meanwhile, is going to look to take advantage now on Crooner as they go down into turns number 4 and 5. Will Crooner be able to defend now? Of course, Tommy will have the outside line now in the run down to 6th. Very nice side by side action here, and it will be Crooner still with the advantage, but of course he's still far from in the clear, as Tommy XSC will still be all over the back of the Ferrari. Especially down into the stadium section. Of course, they do have Kendricks up ahead that they're going to have to navigate as well. And there goes Crooner! And as we've seen multiple times in this race, and that's the first time seeing it live, but just that back end giving out on Crooner's car. I don't know if he has any rear wing damage or not, but that seemed to be a big shunt in the wall. But just a little bit of dirty air there that the Ferrari seemed to get into, and that car just completely let out. And so that drops Crooner all the way down into 13th and is now going to release Tommy XXC to go after Kendricks. But here comes Jim on Kevin Cal. Of course, that Williams really just dumping the battery. It's that battery already gone on the Williams, but he'll still move up into 2nd place. Kendricks, meanwhile, able to overtake T34. Speedy Gunner is, I believe, overtaken by Tommy XXC and is now going to be under threat from Formula Jonah, who he's going to push all the way to what's going to become the outside. Well, the Aston Martin, though, is ahead by a length. By the time they get down into the braking zone, he will have the advantage there, and he'll be able to continue that climb up the order. Of course, up at the front, Alexis Beast still leading this race in that Red Bull. Of course, had led since that safety car restart, but is going to come under more and more threat as DRS is going to allow Jim and Kevin to both stay within touching distance. Of course, Kendrick's not too far adrift either, at only about 1 second and a half back. So definitely keep an eye on that, but we'll certainly be seeing a number of DRS trains potentially forming. So we'll have to keep an eye on this gap up at the front. It's at about 7/10 right now. Of course, Alexis Beast with the advantage, but even with Jim having that DRS open, it seems that Alexis Beast just has enough I believe the ERS advantage is really working in Alexis's favor. Kendricks and Tommy, meanwhile, side by side into turn 1. The Alfa Romeo are going to continue to fight it, as Tommy XSC with a move down the inside, so very nice there. And Kendrick's now going to be under threat from T34. So will both Alpha Towers get the Alfa Romeo in about 5 corners? He's going to, and this battle is going to continue. That's the AlphaTauri up the inside through turn 5, but that's going to be close. But T34 just with a slightly better exit, and that inside line into turns number 6 and 7 is going to be able to make that move work. So it's now an AlphaTauri 4-5, so a very solid showing from both of those drivers. Gruner, meanwhile, already getting the recovery started. He was able to overtake, I believe, Oreo. He's gotten KevProd as well now. So very solid there from the Ferrari, of course, as he looks to get back up into the points. Of course, as we come now to start lap number 25, Alexis Beast still leading. So that's 2/3 of the race distance gone, and it's still Alexis Beast by about 7/10. And he's going to look to break that toe here. Still with enough of an advantage to keep Jim honest, but is going to have that hard breaking down into turn 1 and isn't going to be under threat here. Hendricks, meanwhile, is able to overtake T34, so potentially a bad exit there, as T34 going to lose 2 positions. He's going to lose a spot to Formula Jonah, as well as potentially Dodo Ligo here in through turn 3, but not quite going to lose it there. Of course, won't have DRS advantage on this lap, so here's Dodo Ligo now to the outside. And as they go down into the braking zone, that will be an advantage. So T34 losing 3 positions, I think, largely due to a mistake on the exit of potentially that final corner. So he's kind of going down the order. And Kroner as well, up into 10th place. So that's the Ferrari back up into the points. Of course, here on lap 25, and this battle up at the front is going to continue to heat up, especially as you can see that AlphaTauri of Tommy XXC is now pulling up to the fray. And it was within striking range of Kevin Cow's Mercedes. As a little bit loose there for Alexis, so a big mistake there. The Williams Jim potentially thought about making a move there early, but is going to think better of it. But that gap now down to 3.5 tenths. And we've got about 4 cars all within a second of each other for the race lead, as Tommy XXC with the new fastest lap of the race. He's going to be immediately putting Kevin Cal under threat. Of course, both cars with DRS. Tommy going to be looking to the inside, later braking, and he's going to have a length, and he's going to have that advantage, and he's going to move up into the podium places. So that's Tommy XXC already up into third and can now go chasing after both Jim and Alexis. These two are battling up ahead. Here comes Jim, who's potentially looking for a move for that race lead. Not quite going to have the space to make that move work. Though is going to have potentially a look to the inside there. No, he's again going to think better of it. So Alexis continues to hold that advantage. But of course, this is going to allow that pack behind to continue to get closer and closer. Of course, Jonah only about 2.2 seconds adrift of this battle right now. Here comes Jim already on Tommy XXC, who looked to cut that corner a little bit. But he's going to move around the outside. He'll have the advantage, and as they make their way into the stadium section, it's now a Red Bull family 1-2 with the AlphaTauri and the Red Bull. But Tommy XXC looking really punchy, looking to make 3 overtakes this lap. He'll have a chance on the exit here. Of course, he'll also have the advantage of DRS down in the run to turns number 1 and turns number 5. You can see AlphaTauri continuing to close on the Red Bull. Just down to about a tenth. He's going to look to the inside. There's Jim as well, looking to be all over the track. And so potentially it could be a 2 positions loss for the Red Bull, but no, Jim will tuck back in. But it is Tommy XXC making a move for the lead of the race here on lap number 27, and it's the AlphaTauri taking the lead of the Mexican Grand Prix. Of course, certainly not out of the woods yet, but certainly one of the best positioned of any of the drivers right now, being on those fresher medium compound tires. And is going to, again, just try to look to really pull away at this point in the race. Three-second time penalty as well for Alexis B. So that's our top 2 now with track limits penalties. And you can already see that gap from Tommy XXC back to Alexis B starting to form really, really significantly. But Alexis B with a really good exit there out of the S's is going to keep Tommy at least honest now. Xercity as well with the time penalty. Certainly worth giving the penalties a look. Of course, 3. Every time. Apologies. Let me check to make sure that it's working now. But yeah, sorry, that happens at least once a race. I still need to figure out exactly what's causing that. Let's see, check. Okay, why are we not working? Yeah, it shut off. It shut off again. Hold on. Okay, there it is. I think it's back. I'm sorry, I'm checking based off the stream myself, and so there's a little bit of a delay. Okay, should be all good now. There we go. Alright, so we are back, so I'll just sadly have no audio for what's left of the race. But again, sorry about that. But of course, lap 28 and that gap now up to 1.2 seconds between Tommy and Alexis. But of course, Jim's still the net leader. Of course, definitely going to be important here. We will go ahead and go to the that leader graphic for the moment as Kevprod dives into the pit lane. But of course, you can see there, Tom XXC does have plenty of time to be able to try and pull away from Jim. But with that gap currently at about 2.4 seconds, he's going to have to really try and make that work here. if he wants to secure that race victory for AlphaTauri. Of course, Pruner, meanwhile, still sitting in P9, right on the back of Van Albrecht. And, of course, going to be looking to make a move. Still got a little bit of ERS to play with, especially compared to, about 10% more than the Albrecht, but certainly still going to be something to play with, so certainly going to be very, very interesting to watch. And that gap, meanwhile, up at the front, now up over 3 seconds, so Tommy XSC now should be somewhat in the clear as that gap continues to widen between Tommy XXC and those cars behind. But the AlphaTauri are going to be looking to now just kind of run away as yellow flag in Sector 2. That's a spun Alfa Romeo. That's brought out a safety car late in this race. I don't know why that safety car came out. As Zercity, was able to recover that car. So I don't know. It must have been just the location of the spin that resulted in that safety car coming out. So I don't know why that came up, but certainly very, very confusing in that situation. But I don't know. We're going to have a number of drivers diving into the pit lane now for fresh sets of tires. Jim Pimp saying the track is cursed for safety cars. I think I'd have to agree. Though I'd certainly wager a guess that the location of a lot of these spins, which we could see, of course, going to jump on board with Tommy XXC here real quick. So potentially just drivers attacking that inside curb there, or just getting loose on this outside curb and just going straight left and into that wall on the left-hand side of your screens. And just because, especially, it's so close to the racing line, that could be potentially the reason the game does bring out the safety car so quickly, even if it's just a spin and a lost front wing. But of course, everybody really looking to just push and really make the most of what they can. Of course, when you're really pushing the limit like this, especially so close to cars where dirty air could be a factor. Of course, I believe dirty air less a factor in this year's game as it's tried to emulate real life. But it will be Ian Albrecht selecting to stay out, actually. So the Alpine going to take the lead. Let's see where everybody files out at. But it'll be the Alpine leading for the moment on those older medium compound tires, and now time penalties going to play even more of a factor in the outcome of this race. But it will be Tommy XXC still in P2, followed by Alexis B's Jim, Formula Joe and Kevin Cal, meanwhile, down in 6th. So potentially a mistake there from the Mercedes during one of those in-laps has led to him dropping down into 6th. Of course, he was up just behind and battling with Jim, and I believe Formula Jonah was behind him at the time. So potentially just opportunistic driving from the Aston Martin allows him to jump up into P5. But of course, should have, my math is right, about 4 or 5 laps left to go once we get back underway. So, of course, under that Aston Martin safety car for, I believe, the 4th time in this race. Zercity with another 3-second time penalty, even under safety car. So the drivers really just struggling with track limits. As they can be very challenging at times, as the track does tighten up rather quickly. And, you really have to go out to the limits to try and get the most lap time possible. But of course, penalties, again, just going to be a big point of issue for a lot of our cars. Of course, Jim and Kevin Cal are only drivers without time penalties as of right now, so they're going to be looking to just try and take advantage of that position and just try and stay as close as possible to all the cars out ahead, which should be getting back underway on lap number 33. So if you'll excuse me, I am going to step away. I'm going to have a drink for a quick second. So yeah, I'll be back in like 2 seconds right before we get back underway. So should have the safety car in this lap. I'd be very surprised if we don't see that take place. And I just had to look down to make sure my controller wasn't muted. Thankfully it is, and I'm not talking to myself like I have on more than one occasion streaming here. But of course, safety car in this lap. Of course, let's try and check that dashboard on the Alpine. Of course, the optimal tire window was going to be at about 175 degrees, and that's even a little bit on the colder side. Of course, I do use Fahrenheit because I am correct. So hopefully that doesn't piss too many of you off and cause you to click off the video. But of course, here we go. We're getting back underway, and Dean Albrecht not with the greatest jump here on the Lexus Beast. As Tommy XC and Lexus Beast almost side by side as we restart here. So there's the Ferrari and the AlphaTauri now side by side. It's Lexus Beast with a slight edge, but it's going to really come down into the braking zone here for turn number 1. They're going to stay side by side here. And the Red Bull looking to make a move and just being too tight. And that's Tommy XC right into the rear, into that rear left of Dan Albrecht and just spins him right round. So just, I think, a part of that side-by-side battling, and Tommy XC now going to drop right down the order, potentially with a lot of damage to that car. But that does mean Alexis Beast currently with the lead of the race, but net lead is actually Jim, who does receive a 5-second penalty there, though that's certainly going to go to review for corner cutting and gaining a place. So that's certainly going to go down to review. So we'll have to wait and see on that front. Crooner, meanwhile, getting a penalty, but he's up into P5, so that's a decent jump, as Jim as well with a 3-second time penalty for track limits. So now it's really going to come down to how far away is Kevin Cal going to be from this race lead. He's currently at about 2 seconds back, so Alexis B is going to have to open up that gap by another second if he wants to win this race, and that gap already growing now. So here we go, start of lap 34. So 3 laps to go here in this Mexican Grand Prix as Tommy XC and Speedy Gunner once again swap places. Crooner, meanwhile, able to overtake Kevin Cal down the pit straight. So that Ferrari flying here as Dean Albrecht is going to retire in the pit lane. That was very much a shame as the Alpine just a victim, really, of the battle between Alexis Beast and Tommy XC. So once again, something that's going to go down to the stewarding room for review at the end of this race. So certainly sad to see Dean Albrecht go like that. There's certainly he showed some very, very strong pace throughout the course of this race. As Tommy XC, meanwhile, he will retire as well. So I don't believe that was due to damage. But the AlphaTauri as well is out of this race. Meanwhile, the gap between Kevin Cal and Alexis Beast is now right at 3 seconds. So Alexis Beast is now your net leader, even after penalties are applied. Except that could throw a wrench in it, as he gets very loose there through that stadium section, and is going to lose about almost a second to those cars behind. And is now going to really have to get back on his horse as a whole bunch of new fastest laps come in. It is still Alexis Beast holding that lead. Here comes Jonah on Jim. Can he make that move stick? There goes the Aston Martin back to the outside of the track. Not quite going to have the move down into turn 1, so he'll stay in P3. Of course, Kevin Cal now, once again, back in it with a chance to win this race. Of course, Alexis Beast with a big mistake, a big twitch in the penultimate corner. That little right kink out of the kind of hairpin in the stadium section, and lost a load of time. Of course, that gap to Kevin Cal, who's the only driver without penalties, is 2.5 seconds. Was it that gap that you see on the left-hand side of your screen on that timing tower? That is not the interval. That is the gap to the leader, which is going to be very important as we come down to the closing stages. 2.6 seconds is that gap to Kevin Cal that we're going to have to keep our eyes on as we get to the latter stages of this race. There's the Ferrari of Crooner in the background looking to make a move on Formula Jonah. I don't think able to get that move, make that move stick there, but is going to hold position there for the moment. About 2.8 seconds now the gap. Much cleaner exit this time from Alexis Beast, who will start the final lap of the race and is going to be neck and neck on that timing tower with Kevin Cal, with that gap now just over 3 seconds. So is he going to be able to hold that advantage? Is he going to be able to hold that advantage? Meanwhile, in the background, Kendrick's able to make a move. Crooner able to make a move up the inside of Formula Jonah. So he's up into third on track, but does have more penalties. So here we go. Down into turn number 4. Tim looking to make a run on Alexis speed, so potentially not getting the greatest of exits there was the Red Bull, but he's able to hold that Williams behind for the moment. But will he have to make a move down into turns in this double right-hander? Not quite, but he's still right on the back of him. Kevin Cal still in with a shout. That gap still at about 3 seconds, so keep an eye on that timing tower as we come into the final stages of this race. Not very many corners left to go, so it's still Alexis Beast by about 3.2 seconds to Kevin Cal. Of course, as we come now down it, as Kevprod is out of the race, that was a mistake through the S's. That's not going to matter at this point. Just a couple of corners left to go. Alexis Beast through the stadium section. Of course, the confetti going off for the Red Bull. Will he be able to hold this advantage through the final couple of corners? Just one last traction zone to go, and he comes to the line for the moment. He'll be in the win. It's Formula Jonah currently second. It's Kevin Cal who will take it, but it will be Alexis Beast winning the Mexican Grand Prix for Red Bull. And it's in a chaotic race. It will be the Red Bull coming out on top. Oh boy. So certainly very, very close at the end, but it will be Alexis Beast from Kevin Cal, followed by Formula Jonah, Kendricks, Crooner. Jim ends up in 6th. After that 5-second time penalty for a cutting the corner and gaining a place. Dodoligo is in 7th, T34 in 8th, Speedy Gunner 9th, Oreo Hafton rounds out the points in 10th, and Zersity, sadly the only driver to finish the race and outside of the points. But certainly a very, very chaotic stop and go race, and Kendricks as well, driver of the day, of course recovering from a mistake in qualifying to score some very, very solid points. And as you can see, Alexis Beast coming through the tunnel there, so very good to see the Red Bull on top of the podium. Of course, you can see of course there's the Red Bull team celebrating. Of course, again, very chaotic race, a number of safety cars, and certainly plenty of work left to go for the stewards, but certainly well-deserved, at least well-deserved win, at least as of the moment for Alexis Beast. So great to see him on the top step. But it is Alexis Beast winning the race from 6th on the grid, followed by Kevin Cal in 2nd. Formula Jonah comes in 3rd, so that's a very solid podium for the Aston Martin team. Kendricks goes from back of the grid up into 4th, and Crooner bags P5 and fastest lap. The two Swedes of Jim and Dodolio finished 6th and 7th, with T34 finishing in P8 and Speedy Gunner in 9th. Oreo Haffergan finishes 10th with Zersity in 11th in his home race, so sadly, sad to not see the Alfa Romeo end up in the points after this one. Of course, then Kev Prod finishes a lap down, Tom XC and Ian Albrecht finish 3 laps down, and then your DNFs are Viperize, Tommy VR, Some Guy, James, and JD Bass. So certainly been great to have you on this fine Sunday afternoon or evening, wherever you are. As always, thank you for joining. Certainly, again, stay tuned for Group 3 later on today. Should be in just about half an hour or so. And of course, definitely look forward to all of our groups 1, 2, and 3, all racing at Suzuka, which is going to be our 3rd sprint race of the season next weekend. So again, as always, great to have you. Have a great rest of your day. Going to be signing off. Sadly, not going to have post-race interviews today, as I do have to go do something real quick, so sadly don't have time for it. But as always, thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your day.